Vietnam's jungle didn't just hide enemy fighters, it hid traps. Silent, patient, and engineered to kill or maim with horrifying efficiency. These weren't crude improvisations. They were the Viet Cong's most reliable equalizer against a technologically superior US military. Some units reported more casualties from traps than from direct enemy fire. Veterans will remember the constant tension, the feeling that every step could be the last. For everyone else, this will be an unsettling look into the side of the war that rarely appears in movies. Today, we're breaking down the most feared traps US soldiers faced, how they worked, why they terrified entire platoons, and the grim reality of encountering one in the dense Vietnamese jungle. One of the traps most people have heard of is the punji pit, deadly, but only a few understand its psychological impact on soldiers. These pits weren't just holes lined with sharpened bamboo. They were carefully engineered to immobilize a soldier and force his unit to stop moving. Troops described hearing a sudden scream, a crash, and the horrible realization that someone had fallen in. Spikes were often angled to trap a leg and covered in feces, or rotting material to guarantee infection. What made punji pits so feared was their invisibility. The Viet Cong blended them into the jungle floor using bamboo mats, fresh vegetation, and soil layered so naturally that even experienced scouts missed them. Variants included rotating floors, concealed foot catchers, and deep pits meant to trap a soldier long enough for an ambush. The terror wasn't just injury, it was knowing the enemy wanted you alive but disabled, forcing your squad to risk everything to pull you out. If punji pits targeted your footing, swinging spike traps targeted your whole momentum. A patrol moves forward, brushes a nearly invisible vine, and suddenly a massive log or spiked board swings down with brutal force. These traps had enough force to crush ribs or skulls instantly. Troops said they came out of nowhere. The jungle would be silent, then a violent thud, a scream, and chaos. Some versions included multiple boards designed to hit more than one soldier. Others used sharpened bamboo, rusty metal, or broken tools as shrapnel. The Viet Cong placed them along narrow trails, knowing US patrols couldn't spread out. Clearing the path became a slow, nerve-wracking process. Cutting vines, scanning treetops, and praying you hadn't missed something tucked into the canopy's shadows. Another famous trap was the bouncing Betty. When triggered, it didn't explode on the ground. It launched upward to waist level before detonating, spraying metal fragments in a full 360-degree radius. The explosion targeted the most vulnerable parts of the body: legs, groin, stomach, and lower chest. The worst part was the split second between activation and detonation. Veterans remember hearing the metallic click and knowing death was already in the air. Sometimes a soldier could be tackled and pinned down to prevent the jump. Sometimes the fuse was too short. Worse still, the Viet Cong modified these mines with unpredictable fuses, anti-handling devices, and secondary traps. Even the most experienced engineers said dealing with a Betty always felt like rolling the dice with your life. And if these weren't enough, the area was littered with tripwires. A single fishing line stretched across a narrow path could be enough to trigger a grenade with the pin already pulled. Touch the wire, and the spoon flies off instantly. Soldiers described the sound, a sharp metallic pop that meant a grenade had just armed itself. These traps maimed multiple soldiers at once and were devastating in thick vegetation, where sound and pressure waves bounced between trees. The Viet Cong placed them at natural choke points, riverbanks, low branches, or places where a soldier naturally stepped over or ducked under obstacles. Even bomb disposal teams said detecting them was nearly impossible without clearing every inch of foliage ahead. During the war, Vietnamese soldiers also used one trap, which arguably was the most brutal of all of them: the tiger trap. Despite the name, they had nothing to do with animals. Instead, they mimicked an oversized, inverted spiked pit designed to crush or impale. Some versions were narrow enough to take one man. Others were large enough to swallow a fire team if they bunched too closely. These pits were expertly camouflaged with bamboo and leaves. When triggered, a heavy spiked frame would collapse inward or downward with incredible force. Soldiers often described them as instant graves. Pulling someone out required ropes, manpower, and exposed everyone to ambush, which was often the trap's true purpose. Other areas were equipped with the bamboo whip traps. They were especially terrifying because of their speed. A tension-loaded bamboo pole, bent back and secured with a tripwire, snapped forward like a spring-loaded spear when triggered. The spikes were often smeared with toxins or filth to guarantee infection. These traps hit with enough power to knock a soldier off his feet or drive spikes deep into muscle tissue. Many targeted the legs and thighs, but some were positioned at chest or face height, making them potentially lethal. Clearing them forced soldiers to crawl, feel vines with their hands, and move painfully slow. Many veterans say whip traps stuck with them because they never saw them until they struck. If the physical danger of these traps was horrifying, the psychological impact was even worse. Soldiers described Vietnam as a place where the ground itself felt alive, where every step, every vine, every patch of shadow held the potential to explode or impale you. You weren't just fighting an enemy, you were fighting the jungle, the silence, and your own imagination. Day after day, the tension built. Point men developed a sixth sense for danger, but even the best scouts triggered traps. Veterans talk about walking through the jungle and feeling their heartbeat in their throat. Hyper-aware of every twig snap, some said the fear of traps was worse than firefights. In a firefight, at least you saw the danger. With traps, death came from below, above, behind, anywhere. Even after returning home, many carried that instinct with them. Some avoided walking on grass. Others couldn't hike through wooded areas again. For many, Vietnam never truly ended because the fear of the unseen stayed with them long after the war was over. These traps weren't random. They were part of a strategy that slowed US forces, forced medevacs, exhausted morale, and stretched American resources to the limit. Soldiers learned to move cautiously, scanning every leaf, vine, and shadow. Veterans often say the psychological toll was just as intense as combat itself. This was the unseen war, not the firefights shown in movies, but the silent, ever-present danger under every footstep. Understanding these traps gives us a clearer picture of what American soldiers truly faced in the unforgiving jungles of Vietnam. And now, we have come to the end of the video. If you know some stories of relatives or have participated in the war, feel free to share your experiences and your stories in the comments. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new video. Hope to see you in the next one.